Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Nacho Tuesday here. And I have Roei with me here with Connected. And without further ado, we'd love if you can introduce yourself and what you guys do over there.
Andy, thanks so much for the introduction. It's great to be here and really excited for today. I'll give a very quick sort of 2-3 minutes. This is who I am. This is what we're doing. So my name is Roei Samuel. I'm the CEO and founder of Connected. I've been playing around with technology from a young age. YouTube came out when I was 13, so video content creation, very much the obsession after school, as you can imagine. Fast forward to 2013, built my first tech company, which was essentially a content creation toolkit, helping people create podcasts, videos, giving them tools to optimize content for social. We applied it to the world of sports and gaming, and got really fortunate with that, scaled up to about 9 million monthly active users. We ended up working with the Premier League, NBA, NFL, UFC, really exciting journey. We were acquired by a large gaming company called Gfinity in 2018. And off the back of that, I started to invest in startups and work with startups in a fractional capacity. So board advisory, independent director, fractional CRO, CMO, and I became obsessed with the idea that the future of working would become fractional. So I started to build tools to really power that fractional economy and help organizations and individuals transition into this future of fractional work. 2020, COVID happened, in case anyone didn't know, and then this huge acceleration of more and more people working fractionally, trying to use their time in different ways, no longer commuting. And now I think with AI and automation, this desire for more fractional, more project-based, more agile style ways of working is really here to stay. So with Connected, we're trying to power that fractional economy. And that's myself and Connected in a nutshell.
Definitely. So you guys really help bring like high-powered like advisors into the company. So you guys look for more like C-suite roles, like people that have like a very extensive professional background.
Yeah, this is exactly it. I think if we look at this environment, we have like remote, we have freelance, and we have fractional. And I think the big difference between fractional and those other two is fractional is still very much about who the individual is. It's about their track record, about their CV. It's not like delivering on a project. It's who this person is, and I'm connecting with them because they have the skill set and the expertise and the experience that's really going to help propel my business forward. And it's less about I can't afford full time and more about actually the future of work is fractional and more agile in that way. So it's highly ambitious, awesome executives, founders, C-suite of some of Fortune 500 companies, some of the biggest companies and startups in the UK. So very, very ambitious crowd. Absolutely.
Very nice. Yeah, and there's a lot of benefits for the advisors, of course, too, where they could have a flexible work schedule. They can work with a variety of different companies too. They don't have to, fill that traditional 9 to 5, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think it's one of the really interesting things that we've seen is when we launched this back in 2020, most people wanting to go fractional were almost at the back end of their career. They no longer wanted to do that 9 to 5 because actually they were starting to slow down a little bit in the way they saw their time. But what we've seen over the last 5 years is this huge shift to now highly ambitious young people on very much on the rising part of their career who are doing this because they think this is the way it's going rather than it being like a lifestyle shift in that way.
Yeah, definitely that. And, it does give people, especially the younger generations, more flexibility, which is one of the biggest benefits that a lot of them are looking forward to.
Yeah, this is it. The amount of Gen Z individuals that I speak to now who they're just building a fractional career, like a portfolio career as standard. It's so project-based. I'm helping a friend out with this. I'm getting involved with this. I'm in this community online. It's so much more flexible in a way that I think is very, very different and very, very disruptive to traditional organizations.
Yeah, I feel like I've done a lot of that work myself over the years. I used to have an agency about 20 years ago too, where I'd be like more of like a fractional, like strategic consultant for a lot of companies. And then even now, I'm full-time with NachoNacho, but I get to work with a lot of great companies like yourself and, kind of help on the strategic and execution level too. So I feel like in a way, I'm kind of like a fractional role too.
100%. And for people like yourself, you get it, right? And it's so clear. And I think once you've been operating in that way, probably going into, full-time environment where it's like a corporate without that flexibility, like it's just not on the cards, right? Obviously, NachoNacho is a cool startup. It's very, very different. You're building it in that way. So I think as more and more people see those doors opening, actually the corporate door, the traditional corporate door is a little bit less appealing as well.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely agree. So I guess what are some of the biggest challenges companies face for finding the right advisors? A lot of people are trying to shift into this kind of role, but how do companies really find these people, and then two, kind of sift through the good quality candidates to find the right people for them?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think there's two main areas. There's obviously lots of different things, but we've brought it down to two main challenges. One is that access part. Often this world of advisory boards, advisory working is a hidden market. Very rarely these roles are getting posted online. It's much more network driven, much more connection driven, much more organic in that way. And that's really what we've tried to build with Connected, is this organic network built around these type of opportunities, because that access is difficult. And the second one is often misalignment. Very, very often, as people are starting to go into advisory or get into that space, it's so different to the types of output, demands, commitments, and relationship of traditional ways of working, full-time working. It's much more asynchronous. It's much more, about keeping accountability on key results and things at a high level, rather than getting into the nitty-gritty tactical stuff that is, the majority of most people's, working life. So that misalignment can be a real challenge in that way. So you've got to ensure that incentives align. You've got to ensure that outcomes align, that effort and input align as well. And I'd say those are the two main challenges that we see.
Definitely, and those expectations got to be set right from the very beginning. Otherwise, it's a lose-lose for both parties.
That's it.
And then I guess, I'd love if you could explain a little bit about Connected and kind of how it operates. So you guys have really done a great job building a community around your product. Can you, for the outsider looking in, how would you describe how your platform works?
Yeah, absolutely. So an organization will come to Connected looking for awesome new talent, or come saying, I'm looking for a very specific role, i.e. I want to launch in a new territory, so I need a GTM expert for Scandinavia, right? And they have a clear picture of what they're looking for, and they can access our fractional network. But often businesses are saying, well, look, I don't know exactly what I need at this stage. So they can plug in banking, accounting, and payment data. They integrate their HSBC bank account, the Barclays bank account, for example, their QuickBooks accounting software, and their Stripe payment solution. The platform will ingest all of your data and build out performance management dashboards, so you can get an understanding of your KPIs, how you're tracking, how you're trending against the benchmark, all private to you, doesn't go anywhere, doesn't get shared anywhere. And the system can recommend you fractional talent based off your performance. So for example, you're a B2C fintech within payments, and the system recognizes that whilst your revenue is increasing, your CAC starting to creep up. Boom, here's your performance marketing expert with a background in financial services, who's worked with subscription models before and has a positive impact on other businesses, because we're really using this transactional level data to help businesses understand their requirements and then plug in the right individuals to help them take things to the next level.
That's really cool. So it's a very proactive type of platform too. So it really kind of helps you identify the problem and then introduce the solution right away automatically.
Exactly that. There's nothing more frustrating than as a founder saying, well, this is really bad and they don't know what to do about it. So we've built this conversational interface, say, well, look, this isn't optimal. Have you thought about working with this guy? This is how you can work together. This is how things might look. This is what the KPIs should be. So really helping remove a lot of the anxiety that we often face as founders and business owners, which is like, I need help with something, right?
Yeah, sometimes they don't even know the right question to ask.
This is it. And I think especially now with so much of the doing being driven by automation, it's that guidance and the steering that you still want from individuals who have been there and done that. So we're helping people understand what the doing might be, and then help them find the guiders to really make them feel comfortable in that journey.
Definitely. And then you guys do a lot of in-person events too. We participated with one with you guys here in New York last week, which was really exciting. We had a couple hundred people come out. You guys might have heard about it, but we'd love to do more events with you too. But if you could describe some of the events you do to kind of build your community and bring some of these fractionals and advisory people together in one room. I would love to learn about where you do them and how you go about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're an online platform which really benefits from a strong cross-border network effect. because you don't rely on these synchronous relationships, and you don't have that sort of, oh, if I need a fractional CMO, they need to be on my doorstep. So much of our connectivity happens cross-border and online. But for me, there's actually nothing better than getting people in a room together. Like, I love it. I think psychologically, the people who built Connected are all about fostering connections at the end of the day. And there's nothing like getting a room full of builders and supporters together in that way. I know you guys love doing that and are massive in that space. We feel really passionate about that. I think we're doing another event together at New York Tech Week, which is going to be great. And we're doing sort of 4 or 5 events that week. We're doing 4 or 5 events in Florida that week as well. And then what we've started to see, because we have a community hub online, so we have a community functionality on the platform as well, is we've started to see unofficial Connected chapters pop up. So there's like Connected Tampa, Connected New Jersey, all throughout London, for example, of actually our community now getting together themselves, which I love. And I think for me, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and you guys are making a big move into New York City now. So you guys, that's kind of one of your first and largest hubs in the US, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So we launched in Florida last year. We launched in New York in January this year, and now we're starting to look to Texas, California, and we hope to be nationwide by the end of 2025. So an ambitious plan, but that's what it's about, right?
Yeah, exactly. Move fast, break things, and you figure it out along the way. Yeah, you guys got to get into San Francisco next, of course. I was talking to Zane about that.
Yeah, nice. Love it.
Maybe just in time for SF Tech Week, we could probably look at coordinating for an event there.
Yeah, awesome. Was that first week of October, I want to say?
I think so, yeah. And then LA Tech Week's going to be the week after that.
Nice. Great. Love it.
Nice. So I guess what are some other key benefits you'd like to highlight for companies to consider when bringing on these type of advisors?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on the stage of the business. So if you're a startup, I'd say there's sort of 3 main advantages to building that advisory board. One is sort of signal, right, to VCs, to the market, to the customers that, okay, this business is trying to go on that type of journey. An advisory board is often analogous with a business which wants to get venture backed and wants to grow in a certain way, especially if they're building that advisory board as a startup. So it's a really nice signal to the market. Similarly, it builds credibility. Right, having that advisory board can enhance a startup's reputation, boost credibility with investors, customers, stakeholders. So it's a really strong one. And then finally, speed. Speed is core when you need to get everything answered yesterday. Having a group of trusted advisors who have been there, done that, who can either provide those answers directly or often have a network to dive into for those answers is awesome. When it comes to SMEs, it's much more about strategic input without bloating the team. You know, if you're an SME, a traditional SME, which isn't seeking equity funding, but is just going on a more bootstrapped route, you still need all of those things. It's less about the signal, maybe less about the credibility, although still for customers, it's important, but less about the VC signal and more about how do you get access to that type of input, that type of information and education without bloating out the team in that way. And then for larger companies, you know, there's such a diverse range of reasons why someone builds an advisory board. Often you see big enterprises with multiple advisory boards. Some are more single issue focused like GTM. Some are more around governance. So lots of motivations that we see as a business gets more mature.
Yep, definitely. So what are some of the top qualities and skills you look for if you're going to build your advisory board, especially if it was considering an SMB that might not, you know, it might be their first time in that foraying into building an expert advisory board like that.
Yeah, totally. I think you're right. I think that tends to be the case most of the time. I think it's all about starting with the gaps and the blind spots, right? I think as any business owner, the business owner journey is such a growth journey, right? Like, what am I good at? What am I bad at? What do I need to park my ego on? What do I need to bring in help with? Or otherwise I'm going to, you know, potentially drown the company, right? So I think it's all about starting with the gaps. If you are a brilliant technologist, you may be a perfectionist, which can be good, but can also lead to a level of risk aversion that kills commercial opportunities, right? As just one example. So it's all about starting with the gaps.
Yeah, that or too much focus on like building features instead of like understanding the customer, you know, the customer problem and designing a good UX to deliver that solution to that customer.
This is it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess what's the best way to compensate these advisory board members, especially for a younger startup or an SMB that might not have like a huge budget? Is there any sort of like equity compensation that kind of comes along with that, or are they looking at like more of like an hourly rate?
Yeah, so I think it depends on all those things. If you're a traditional SME which is into profitability, giving away equity might be less interesting. It might be more cash incentive or performance plus a bit of day rate. If you're a startup which does not have cash, and actually that alignment on equity value and enterprise value growth is the key, then you're much more likely to go skin in the game with 0.1 to 1% of equity, depending on stage and commitment, etc. So it really depends. And then if you're a first-time advisor, it's unlikely that you're going to be able, well, it's very unlikely you're going to be able to command the type of equity and compensation packages that you see these, incredibly established multi-role, multi-independent director individuals, right? We all start somewhere. So the big answer is it depends on all the above.
It's a great answer. How do you ensure these people remain engaged and actively contribute to the company's success?
Yeah, I think the more you give is the more you get with these advisory boards. And I know because I made this mistake. I had an advisory board at my first company, and for the first 6 months, I wasn't keeping them in the loop. And then actually all that the advisory board existed to do was a catch up to try and keep them in the loop again and almost just bring them up to speed and not get anything good out of it. So I think it's really important that you're keeping them in the loop as you would with your investors, so monthly updates and all that side, so that when you're coming to them for expertise and guidance and help, it's much more regular. And I think you need to avoid that engagement drop by setting very clear expectations on deliverables, outcomes. It could be getting them to prepare a board pack or an advisory board pack. It could be, KPIs that you set attached to remuneration on that side. But you've got to invest in keeping them up to date with all the most pertinent material information. Otherwise, you risk that relationship just being about catch-ups.
Yeah, you mentioned something really key there. The communication aspect is critical. So keeping them updated, even if I like how you consider them like an investor almost, where if they're getting those biweekly or monthly updates, at least they kind of know what where your company's going, what you're working on. So so each and every time you talk to them, it's not like a cold start problem. It's been what you've done the last month.
Yeah, exactly, and especially when likely the times where you really need the advisory board's help are going to be moments of urgency. Transactions come in, a term sheets come in, a customer's coming with this. And when you need that advice promptly and timely, you don't want to be using that call to be like, well, this is what's happened over the last 6 months, right? So absolutely, for it to be the best that it can be and those opportune moments, they need to have that level of information.
Any other common mistakes that people make when picking advisors? For instance, does your platform include any sort of like reputation or any sort of vetting process, so the company will know that this person's actually legitimate? Whereas, my experience living in Silicon Valley for a few years, I feel like everyone was a wannabe advisor there. So I got really good at like learning how to screen people that just really wanted to find like the next company and get a piece of equity in it, but didn't really want to do much work for it. While there was a lot of other people, if you find the right ones that are, highly capable advisors that are actively engaged, that are, really make your company what it is. What would you recommend for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the most important skills as a founder you can do is you need to have that screening process. And also because a good advisor might be a good advisor for you, but a bad advisor for someone else, and vice versa, right? Because so much of it is not just about knowledge. There's also a massive qualitative and psychological cultural fit element to this as well. So for example, like we talk about the technologists who are perfectionists when it comes to optimizing and iterating the product. Actually, what they need is not someone who understands the space, but someone who's going to push them to be less risk averse. So it's so much of it is about that configuration. So we have consultationists who will come in and have a conversation between you, can even do psychometric testing depending on the requirement there, to make sure that we can overcome that. But then also, as with any marketplace or platform, heavy emphasis on rankings, reviews, ratings, of course.
You guys thought it all through. I like it. I also like the aspect that you guys offer consultation, because I do believe a lot of times that founders do want to hire like-minded people. It's easy to fall into that trap where you want to hire like yes men or people that kind of think like you. It kind of becomes like its own little, internal cult. Whereas,
Exactly.
they should be looking at it in terms of, maybe it's a third perspective that comes in that could say, hey, actually, you need this counterbalance personality in your company. to work with. And somebody, like the founder themselves might not see that, whereas, one of your consultants would probably pick that up right away.
Yeah, this is it. And we're actually integrating a new type of psychometric testing called ETA testing to try and help with that as well. Because sometimes, as we all know, with founders, they don't want to hear the baby's ugly, right?
Yeah.
So being able to say, look, statistically, actually, you guys are really well indexed in this area, but you need some help here. Not us. This is what the testing says. Actually, can help overcome that. So totally agree with you.
Totally. Yeah. One of my big methodologies is to love your customer, like your product.
Nice.
Sometimes it's easy to love your product and what you're building too much to see it for the flaws that it does have.
This is it.
Yep. So I guess, how do you handle conflicts or any sort of issues that might come up with an advisor if it's a mismatch?
Yeah, it's a tough one, but you got to call it early. And at the end of the day, a good advisor will respect you as a founder for saying, look, this isn't working for X. And ultimately, like with any hire, whether it be fractional advisory or full-time senior exec, it's the same skill set. It's the same things, right? You've got to be able to call those. Otherwise, they'll run rampant over you. And so I think that's important is calling it early. And also setting fixed term agreements. So there's natural off-ramp points if it does get contentious.
Great. Do you guys have any sort of like a consultation for that? So maybe some of the more introverted founders, maybe some of the engineers that are brilliant at coding, but maybe not as good in the people skills department, they might be afraid of conflict directly. Do you guys have anybody, consultants, to kind of help them A, identify if there's a problem, and two, be able to take an action on it?
Do you know what? It's not something we've done so far. I love it. So watch this space. But what we have got for every founder is templates for those agreements. So sets out, the clauses for breaking, like what you should look for. So we don't have a hands-on version of that, but I really like that.
Yep, there you go. New feature.
Nice.
So I guess what are some other emerging trends that are going to shape the advisory role in 2025 and beyond?
Well, fractional is here to stay, right? So I think the advisory board becomes more and more status quo, and I think you see it bleed into, I think where it's going to be really interesting is like where a founder says, well, we could hire a full-time CX, whatever it might be, or we could actually just add on another advisor. So I think that you're going to see the advisory board bleed more into the space that was traditionally occupied by another senior FTE, which I think is a great thing. I think it's a great thing for businesses, great thing for bottom line. So I see that as a big trend.
Yeah, I can definitely see that as well too. So I guess any other, I guess, have you ever had a moment of failure in your life, and what did you learn from that?
I've had about 6 today. I think if you're an ambitious founder, if you're an ambitious founder, failure is a big part of it. I think, as we were just talking about, C-suite, I think one of the big mistakes that I made was with the first business, especially, is you could hand out C-suite titles too early. You want to bring in like a head of operations or a head of marketing, and especially at that time where you don't have money to pay them probably, and you're like, oh, I'll give them the CMO title because that way they'll be really bought in. And then you're basically creating a guaranteed nightmare in 18 months' time when you realize what you want from a CMO is not who you hired the first time, because the business is totally different. The business model is different. You've seen this time and time again. So I would say it's actually a really good place to use advisors, where you're avoiding giving that title, you're still getting expertise and the inputs. But I'd say that's a big mistake, which I've learned from, is senior titles too early. But I actually launched a YouTube series called "You Can't Fail," which I'll send out to you, Andy, if you're an interest. Called "You Can't Fail," which is basically compiling the biggest mistakes that I made, what we learned, how we've tried to improve them with Connected and with portfolio companies of mine, to try and help out founders along the way.
Yeah, that's really the best way to learn. There's two schools of thought on that. So one school of thought is, it's better to learn from somebody else's mistake. But, I also do believe that, it's good to make your own mistakes as well, because that way you get like this intuitive sense for what's, how to operate. So, when you come across these kind of failures, you just get that gut instinct for the next one. So when you do reach that crossroads, you know in your gut the decision to actually make because you've been through it before.
Yeah, totally. And you're right. And the funny thing with founders is it's the psychological type that says, I almost need to make the mistake again myself, because I almost like back myself to avoid that mistake. So it's a really interesting one. I think it's a balance, right? Life is too short to make all the mistakes yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
But you know, and this is it, right? As a founder, you will end up getting yourself into the weird and wonderful, right?
Yep. Yeah, because sometimes you can just read a lot of books, but like if you don't know how it applies in like real life, actually.
Yeah, totally.
Definitely. So I guess what other challenges did you face getting connected up and running? Obviously it's not your first rodeo, but I'm sure you had maybe some initial challenges that you guys probably had to overcome.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think so. We started off with, we identified a niche, right, which was bringing together founders, investors, and initially independent directors. So we were really, really niched into that. And then we saw that the market start to drag us more and more into the broadening landscape of fractional. So non-exec and independent director became, board advisor became fractional C-suite became fractional more broadly. And that's really where we see our success now. And I think we should have lent into that broadening earlier. I think we tried to stay loyal to our niche for too long because that was what we knew. And we weren't being as radically realistic with ourselves as we should have about what was getting the better usage. And actually the niche that we started off and identified was not getting a strong usage and retention as the way that the market wanted to use the technology. So we should have been more data-led, less emotional about that early on, but that's now something we've lent into in a big way.
Yeah, that's a great point you made as well, too, that, you kind of let the customer and the market almost kind of decide your product for you. Yeah. There's a lot of insights that can be gleaned from just, how people see your product and how they want to use it, as opposed to sometimes, we come with an idea to market and we say, this is the way things should be. But a lot of times your customers will say, I see what you're trying to do, but it should be like this.
100%.
Yeah.
Sorry, go
on. Go ahead. You were saying something?
No, go for it.
Yeah. So a lot of times that presents the opportunity actually that was sitting right in front of you the whole time. So a lot of times your customers will actually see it because they're the ones looking for a solution for the problem, and they'll see what you have and they'll see what the potential gaps are from being able to deliver that solution for them.
This is it, man. And I think as a founder, it could be a bit scary, especially if and in the connected situation, we'd already raised $11 million when we had seen like, okay, this is how the market wants to use it. So you've built this narrative with your investors, you've sold them a vision that you fully believe in, but now it's changing, right? And it can be a difficult moment to say, well, look, we believe despite this commercial traction, actually we need to lean into something slightly different because that's going to reap better rewards in the future. So it is a tough one, but you're right. And you've got to listen to the customer.
Definitely. Yeah. The P word pivot can be a little scary sometimes. It's not like as exciting as profit, but nonetheless, an important point in the company.
Exactly. And if you do one right, you get to the other.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So I guess what's one thing you want, what's one key takeaway you want potential customers to know about Connected, and where can they learn more about your guys' platform and sign up today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our belief is that the future of work is going fractional, and we don't want to have any barriers to that. And we want to be a positive influence on that ecosystem and help people make that transition. So as an organization, you can come to Connected and get fractional talent without broker fees, no middlemen, no gatekeepers. You can get straight access to these amazing individuals. So hopefully that's useful for every startup out there.
Sounds like it would be. So I guess what's next for you guys over the next 5 years?
Yeah, so we have launched in the US about 16 months ago, and we are just getting started there, barely scratching the surface. I would love us to be nationwide in the US by the end of this year, if not certainly in 12 months' time. And then we're just really bullish on that. I think the beauty of the market that we're in with, fractional talent, where you don't have that cold start problem. One of the reasons we were able to grow in New York as quickly as we have, and we're growing 5 times quicker than we were in Florida, is because the demand from those in New York is satisfied by the network in Florida and Georgia and the UK and Dubai, and it doesn't really matter. You don't have that synchronous geographic sensitivity. So we're hoping to really go global over the next 5 years.
Excellent. And should we expect to see your team at New York Tech Week?
Absolutely. I look forward to it, and I'll see you guys there.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it as well. Well, Roei, thanks so much for coming on today. We're excited to partner with your organization, and looking forward to the event for New York Tech Week and soon what else we could do together.
Awesome. Andy, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you.
Take it easy. See ya.
All right, bud.